Hey everybody, welcome to the Eckankar Soul Adventure, where we explore the question, is there more to life than what we see? I'm Doug Kunin, and I'll be your host for this episode. Our theme for today is from mindfulness to soulfulness. Seems like everyone's talking about mindfulness. So what's driving that focus? Perhaps it's one thing, the desire for awareness. Awareness of what's going on with our bodies, emotions, and thoughts. And is it possible there's even more for us to become aware of? A state of being beyond the body, emotions, and mind? Soulfulness? This touches on an eternal spiritual principle, which Eckankar calls the rule of destiny. And that holds that people, at some time, will begin to awaken to who and what they are. Well, there's no time like the present, and we have a guest here who has his own story on the road to awakening and discovery. He's an avid spiritual explorer and a longtime student of the Eck teachings, Mark Richardson.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm always up for a spiritual adventure.
Sounds like a plan. What can you tell us about your adventure on the journey from mindfulness to soulfulness?
Around age 14, I wanted to learn meditation, so I actually tricked my mother into signing a release form so I could go to the YMCA and learn. And so I learned to meditate, and one day they gave me this little ceremony, and they said, okay, here's a word you can chant, and why don't you go in this room and practice it? So I went in the room, I closed my eyes, and within a few moments, all of a sudden, I was outside my body, looking back at my body. And then I just flew off to some other world, to some other experience, experiencing this freedom and this love and this sense of myself as something other than my body, which I had just seen in the chair. And then for some period of time later, I don't remember how long, all of a sudden I'm back in the body, sitting in the chair. And it was like immediately having some of those questions answered, because I knew I was more than the body. I knew that I'd survive, or there was something after death. So I went to tell the instructor about it. I was all excited. And he said, well, you know, meditation is about quieting the mind, so I would suggest you don't do that anymore. Well, I didn't even know how I did it to begin with, so that wasn't a problem. And then for the next year, I meditated every day trying to reproduce the experience, and it never happened. So after the year, I kind of went back on my search to try to find answers. And then fortunately, I was in a bookstore one day. This is in high school now. And a friend of mine found a book in the bookstore called Eckankar, Key to Secret Worlds. Well, the Secret Worlds part, I didn't know what Eckankar was, but the Secret Worlds part really interested me. And as I opened the book, it was like someone dropping a spiritual traveler's guide on me. It had a roadmap to these inner worlds. It had spiritual techniques to have more spiritual experiences. So it really opened me up to a whole world and multiple worlds of possibilities. So I was pretty excited and just amazed. And it reminded me of a time when I was with my girlfriend and we brought her granddaughter to Disneyland. And so we go into the middle of Disneyland and we go to Cinderella's castle, and she's all excited because that's what she really wanted to see. And after a little while, we said, okay, let's go see the rest of Disneyland. She goes, what? There's more to Disneyland than Cinderella's castle? And that's how it was for me with this book. It was like it was my friend, it was my guide, and it was just opening up this world. So I wasn't alone anymore. I had these techniques, and I had this book that was describing everything. And the book gave me all these possibilities, like to journey into past lives, to open up my dreams to these inner worlds, to experience what they call the light and sound of God, which they talk, you could actually have the experience of. Now, in that book, it had techniques for past lives, for dreams, for soul travel, which I was excited about. And there was also a very special word in there called the HU, H-U, like in the word human. And that word, if sung with an open heart, can actually begin to open the spiritual ears to hear the sound. So that would be something that someone, and I often practice for 20 minutes, the HU. So that could be one way to start to hear the HU. So, this book really was the roadmap to all these experiences I wanted, and it took some practice like mindfulness does and other things too.
Speaking of practice, you mentioned that in the meditation class they give you a word to practice with, a mantra, if you will. And just to make a connection here, you've just shared the word HU as it was given in the Eckankar book you read. So for those who aren't familiar, it's an ancient mantra, as well as a sacred sound, a carrier of love between soul and God. It's regarded as the sound behind all sounds, and it's sung or chanted like this: HU, HU. And just a nice, easy, outgoing breath, HU, as part of this love song to God. Okay, going back to your journey. So Mark, here you are having some incredible experiences in your younger days. What's been your experience as you've moved along in life and working with the spiritual exercises and the HU?
Wow. Well, one of the first things I love about it is that the adventure just continues. I'm as excited about it today as I was, back in the 60s and 70s. And what I thought about all these experiences that I wanted, soul travel and dreams and all that, is the common element is it all leads to love. And from that, there's a saying in the teachings of Eckankar that I am soul and I exist because God loves me. So we're actually here in life to learn to give and receive divine love. And in turn, love brings into our life the possibility of healing, it brings guidance, and it brings this adventure. And also, as soul, we're able to see the threads of why things happen to us. It's like soul travel is like going above the chessboard so you can see why things happen to you, and that your whole life is orchestrated around what does it take to learn love. I remember there was a time when my parents were getting divorced, and my mother took it very hard emotionally and physically. She was having physical symptoms from the pain she had. And, knowing about the HU, she's a Christian, and I introduced her to the HU as a love song to God that anyone from anywhere in the world can sing, and people of other cultures and other teachings sing it as well now. And I said, maybe this will help. Maybe it'll help your heart and what you're going through. And out of desperation, I think, that night she tried it before she went to bed. And the next day she had an experience to report to me and asked me about. She said, Mark, I woke up in the middle of the night, sat up in bed, and there was this blue light filling the room. And I was crying, but it was a crying of joy and love and fascination with what is this blue light. And I was able to explain to her, I said, Mom, that's the light of God. And it can come as white, as yellow sometimes, but it actually, in that case, came as blue. And I was so happy to be able to introduce her to this light of God. So it's, something for anyone can experience. And in this case, a time of need. So it was just wonderful that she was able to receive the real start to her healing over this breakup.
Amazing.
And it's available to anyone. My mother, again, being a Christian, when she saw the blue light, that's often that same state of God consciousness, the blue light we know as this thing we call the Mahanta.
Yeah. And of course, in Eckankar, there's an outer and inner teacher known as the Mahanta, the living Ek Master. And he can actually work with us as we work with these exercises and bring this spiritual transformation to another level and offering us another steps. Sometimes it might come as a nudge or just a feeling or a knowingness. And the inner guide, the Mahanta, can help us in that way. And of course, the outer teacher is Harold Klemp, the spiritual leader of Eckankar, and has amazing amount of spiritual exercises. These techniques offer direct contact with the light and sound of God, the divine, life-giving current that runs through all worlds and touches all people. In this next audio clip, Harold Klemp talks about the art of going within and connecting with divine spirit.
The world is going so fast, and the pace is speeded up so greatly. You can call this the pace of karma. In other words, it means the interaction of people with people has been speeded up greatly, so that we have to find some time to be quiet by ourselves. This is the only way to make contact with the inner force or the inner master or whatever you want to call this power. This is one technique that can be used. There's simply different methods of quieting the outer senses and seeing what happens within. You can do this if you are, doesn't matter what faith you are. You can do it with prayer. You can do it with the Lord's Prayer. You can do it with any of these things. Very quietly contemplate on the Lord's Prayer or look at a master who is compatible with you, someone you respect. It follows the same principle. You can look either to one of the Eckmasters, or you can look to Jesus, or you can look to any other saint who means something to you. The purpose of this is to establish trust and confidence before you go to that stillness within. And then you begin actively looking for either the light or listening for the sound. There may be a number of different sounds that you will hear, which is only this spiritual force vibrating at a certain speed, at a certain level. Sometimes it sounds like whistles. It can sound like running water. It can sound like the swishing. I don't know how to say it. If you take a wire and whip it through the air, it can be a sound like this, or it can be music. This spiritual sound will have many different manifestations, and what it's doing is cleansing and uplifting you in your consciousness to have a broader understanding of the life you lead. And this is for your benefit, of course.
So how about we try a contemplation technique right now? This one is called For Peace and Joy. It involves listening for the sound current, and it also includes a visualization. So I'll read this passage, and then we'll play an audio clip of the Hugh song. You can join in or just listen as you test this out. Shut your eyes and look into the spiritual eye. It's between your eyebrows in the center of your forehead. And it's the window of soul. Sing Hugh, an ancient name for God, one of the most powerful words for spiritual upliftment. As you sing Hugh, listen for an inner sound. It may come in any number of ways, like the sound of a rumbling train, a singing bird, buzzing bees, a mellow flute, or even soothing guitars. While singing Hugh, even if you don't hear a specific sound, just imagine the holy sound of God cascading over you like a waterfall of sparkling, pure waters. It is cleansing the blemishes of spirit. Open your heart to its blessings. It brings peace, joy, and spiritual freedom. These exercises are for you to experiment with. You can adapt them, create your own. Find out what opens your heart. And with time, contemplation becomes a divine language that speaks to the highest of who we are. If you want to explore this language, you're invited to visit our webpage, giftofhu.org. It's giftofhu.org. And you'll find videos, spiritual exercises, a free app with a 20-minute Hu recording, and a lot of other resources. We've got links to the Eckankar bookstore. So if you have an interest in the book Eckankar, Key to Secret Worlds by Paul Twitchell, the modern-day founder of Eckankar, you can link to it there. Or the Spiritual Exercises of Eck book by Harold Klemp. Many, many spiritual exercises in there. Well, we've covered a lot of territory today. Mark, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you all for listening in. Stay tuned for future episodes. All the best on your soul adventures.